Are bullpup weapons useless? Bullpup weapons have caused a great stir among weapon connoisseurs since their appearance. They are weapons that have a quite futuristic look, and many claim that these will indeed be the weapons of the future. But if they are so good, why are the world's armies getting rid of them? To answer all these mysteries, we have to travel a bit far back in time. Actually, bullpup weapons are quite old. One of the first was the EM1 and the subsequent M2, two British bulldog weapons created after World War II from the captured German Sturmgewehr 44. But these two failed to become standardized because they were rivals of the fantastic Belgian FNFAL. The Soviet Union had also been experimenting for years after World War II with this type of technologies, producing alongside the AK-47 the TKV-408, and later the TKV-011 and TKV-022 were created, weapons that seemed quite promising, but the Soviet Army decided to set aside to standardize the AKM series. Clearly in these years, bullpup technology seemed to be in its infancy, and it wouldn't be until the 70s that multiple nations began to experiment with bullpup technology, creating quite strange prototypes even for our time. And these already had enough effectiveness to opt to be acquired in bulk by the armies of the world. One of the pioneers was the Austrian Steyr Army Universal Gewehr, or the Sturmgewehr 77, a polymer-coated weapon that had almost the same characteristics as a conventional rifle, but being much shorter. Many police agencies and armies of the world bought this rifle in bulk because it was quite novel, which was one of the first countries to acquire a bullpup weapon. Alongside Austria was France in 1978, with the FAMAS assault rifle, a pretty good rifle that, like the Armée Universal Gewehr, had no apparent disadvantages against its conventional counterparts. It was very difficult for the FAMAS, as the French government took almost 10 years testing the FAMAS to see if it met expectations. After the appearance of these two rifles, many bullpup rifles began to emerge, and many armies around the world were evaluating the possibility of acquiring bullpup rifles for their armies. But from the 80s to the present, almost no country acquired bullpup rifles as a standard weapon, beyond equipping some police and military forces. In fact, countries like France have already replaced their FAMAS with German versions of AR-15 type rifles, like the HK416. China, which in the 90s acquired the QVZ-95 as a standard weapon, also decided to replace them with conventional QVZ-191 rifles. Israel created the Tabor family of weapons, a whole family of weapons that ranges from carbines to precision rifles. They were standardized in the early 2000s, but according to unofficial sources, there are already plans for these rifles to be replaced by AR-15 type rifles. We also have England, which in the 80s decided to follow in France's footsteps, but this time creating a quite horrible family called SA-80 that Heckler-Koch modernized to make it more reliable. And although nothing is said about a replacement, we can guess that we will probably see its total replacement soon. So, in summary, bullpup weapons for military use seem to be disappearing. But why? Aren't bullpup weapons supposed to be better than conventional ones? The truth is that bullpup weapons have quite a few problems. In concept, bullpup weapons try to solve a problem of the time, but create several more in the process. The main problem that the Bullpup Paradigm attacked was the size of the weapons. Shortly after World War II, it was a problem, as battlefields were no longer always in open fields, and now also had to be fought in the city. In close quarters battle, it was important to have a short and comfortable weapon to pass through narrow places and aim at irregular covers. Bullpup weapons attacked this problem, clearly shortening the size of the rifles considerably. But this created quite a few problems. First, the clear and undeniable problem of ergonomics. Many say this problem does not exist, but it is a reality. Bullpup weapons are much more uncomfortable than conventional weapons. They have less grip space as they are shorter. The stock cannot be adjusted. The center of gravity is behind, and depending on the weapon, it can feel unbalanced. Many aiming devices have to be higher than normal, which means you have to stick your head out more and cover. The mechanisms are more complicated, and these make the weapon particularly taller and even more expensive. Reloading is even more complicated, and being chest to ground makes it even more difficult. These are problems that arise just by making the weapon shorter to increase the size of the barrel. If we think about all these problems, we can get an idea of why the world's armies are no longer acquiring bullpup weapons for their armies, and those who bought them, at least the large armies, are already in the process of replacing their bullpup weapons. The bullpup weapons paradigm tries to fix a problem that in fact no longer exists. Since conventional rifles have really become short, obviously bullpup rifles are even shorter than conventional rifles. But unlike bullpup weapons, conventional rifles have become even more ergonomic. So does this mean that bullpup weapons will disappear? Definitely not. Bullpup weapons are still very popular in civilian markets, and some police and military forces still prefer bullpup weapons. They will continue to be quite popular, it's just that as things stand, not in the military world where the real money is. We can't say that bullpup weapons are bad either. They are just relatively inferior to conventional ones, especially if we are talking about the military field, particularly in the form of sniper rifles, which have definitely proven to be superior to conventional sniper rifles. It's also possible that in the future we will see a bullpup weapon that really solves all these problems, and that the future, as experts say, is with bullpup weapons.